God is doing right now for us. My counsel shall stand, and I will do all my pleasure. Calling a bird from the east, the man that executed my counsel from a far country. Yeah, I have spoken it. It will also bring to pass. I have purposed it. I will also do it. Ephesians now. Sister Charlene read Ephesians, and I read Ephesians. And now I'm going to go back to Ephesians chapter 1, verse 11. In whom we also obtain an inheritance, being predestinated according to the purpose of him who worketh all things after the counsel of his own will. But then, you're looking at Psalm 135 and 6. So, but as Joseph approaches the end of his earthly life, I want you to see some steps that Joseph took to demonstrate his absolute confidence in the providence of God. I want to preach this morning. Standing on the promises of God. I'm not through yet. That was just my intro, y'all. Standing on the promises. I would like for us to watch as Joseph releases his past, remembers God's providence, and rests on God's promises. These steps leave us no doubt that Joseph understood that God was in absolute control of every event in his life. Joseph knew that. Let's consider this text and learn the truth that God meant it for the good. My first point. With verse 15 through 19 releases his past. After the death of Joseph, the brothers of Joseph, as worried. They remember all the terrible things that they did to Joseph years ago. They remember how they hated him. They remember how they sold him as a slave. They remember how they covered up his disappearance with the lie that he was dead. They remember the things and many other things. They are afraid. They are sure that now their father is dead. You hear what I said? They are sure that their father is dead. Joseph will seek revenge against them. So they come up with a plan. They sent someone to Joseph with a message. They want him to believe that Jacob left word for him to forgive his brothers before he died. When Joseph hears these words, he broke down and started crying. In other words, he wept. It was never in Joseph's heart to hold their past over their heads. He had forgiven them for their transgressions a long time ago. As Joseph as he comes up to the end of his life, he can look back with a clear conscience. We have no record that he harmed no one. We have no record that he holds a grudge against no one. In fact, he reminds his brothers that he is not in the place of God. In other words, they need not to fear Joseph with what they have done wrong. They will eventually face a higher court, an infallible judge. That is a good way to die. As we pass through life, there will be times when we are hurt by the words and actions of others. That's right. It is inevitable. We will be hurt, and sometimes we will be hurt very deeply. We cannot help what others do to us, but we can help what we do that hurts others. When the hurtful words and harsh deeds of others break our hearts, we really only have two courses of action. We can be angry, hold a grudge, and seek revenge. Or we can forgive them and leave the matter in the hands of God. Here's the scripture mandate given to us by the Lord in Matthew 18:21 through 35. Also in Luke 17:1 through 5 for your reading. One day we will all leave this world. Are you prepared to leave it with a clean conscience? Here's what you need to do. If you're the offending party, you need to go to them and ask for forgiveness. Until you do, your relationship with God will never be what it could be. If you are the offended party, you need to take the matter before the Lord and strive to reach a place of forgiveness. That's right. You will never be happy in the Lord. Your joy will never be full. And you will never be of use to God Almighty until you have forgiven those who have wronged you. It may be that you will have to confront the person about their sin. Joseph didn't sugarcoat it, what his brothers had done to him. It may be that with the help of God, you can simply forgive them. Either way, you need to deal with the issue before it drains you. Before it drains you. Before it drains you. Before it drains the spiritual life out of you. Joseph was able to leave the world with a clean conscience toward you, standing on the promises of God. And that brings me to my second point. Remembers God's providence. Joseph does not pretend that what his brothers did to him was not evil. It most certainly was. He knew the intent of their heart. After all, he was there when they betrayed and sold him as a slave. But Joseph saw deeper than their intentions. In spite of what they were doing wrong, God was doing something far more wonderful. Yes, they sinned against Joseph, but God even used their sin to accomplish an eternal plan. It was one verse Joseph looked back on 30 years of trial and triumph and acknowledges God's hand in every detail of his life. Joseph knows that their hatred and betrayal, the slavery and the imprisonment, and the loneliness and the separation were all part of a much bigger plan. God used the valleys and the victories of Joseph's life to reach Joseph's brothers, to encourage Jacob, to bring the children of Israel to Egypt, and to literally save the entire world at that time. Surely God did mean it for the good. Well, I'm preaching and y'all don't know it. It goes without saying that God will probably not use the events of our lives to accomplish such amazing things in our own lives. It is not likely that he will use the trials and tragedies we face to save our nation and accomplish the redemptive plan. However, we can be sure of one thing. As we pass through this valley of life, we can count on the fact that every valley and every victory is part of God's perfect plan for us, and that he will use them for our good and for his glory. That is the promise of Romans 8:28. We would have to admit that we like the victory more than we like the valley. We like the good days more than we like the bad days. Here is the question that confronts us. Are we willing to joyfully endure everything that life throws at us, knowing that God is behind it all and he will get the glory out of all of it? Are we willing to accept his will even when it goes against our own will, knowing that he will develop us all the way through it. That was Paul's experience. We should strive to make it ours as well. When we pass through the hard places of life, it is easy to forget that God is in control. The next time life pulls the rug out from under you, remember that God is always there to catch you. Remember that he invites you to come to him for comfort and consolation. Remember, no matter what takes place in life, that God meant it for his good. That's why I'm standing on the promises of God. And as I come to my last and final point, rest on God's promise. Stand on God's promise. What God meant for the good is for your good and his glory. So trust in God, on his promises. Stand on a firm foundation. Trust in Jesus. He'll make everything all right. Trust in the Lord and watch him work it out. But if you move out the way and allow God to fight, he'll work it out for you. Y'all trying to make me preach. Y'all slow down a little bit. Slow down a little bit. I got to get this last point in, Brother Woodford. Rest on God's promises. After a long, productive, and happy life, the time came for Joseph to leave this world. In other words, he was about to die. When that time came, he made, listen to this now. I don't want y'all to miss this. He made the children of Israel, he made them a promise to take his bones when they came to Egypt. Joseph is claiming a promise God made to his father many years before. Joseph dies believing that God will visit his people one day and take them to a better land. This is the same assurance the saints should have today. We're looking for visitation from the Lord. The sad truth of our own mortality, brothers, the fact is we are leaving this world, but death is not the end. Woo, that's good news, y'all. Death is not the end. Our departed loved ones who died with their faith in Jesus are now resting in the Lord. And there will come a day when the Lord will visit their graves and bring those bodies out. If you look in 1 Thessalonians 4:13 through 18, he'll reassure you that when Joseph comes, when God comes, he said Joel's going to come with a shout, and the dead in Christ shall rise again and meet him in the middle of the air. Y'all slow down, y'all trying to make me preach. They will be raised from the dead in a new and improved edition. 1 Corinthians 15:49 through 57. Of course, we have an even greater promise than the one given to Israel. Our Lord is preparing a place for us. Woo. And one day he will return to get us. He will even come for us before we face death. But even if he doesn't, and death's icy hands place its frigid hold on us someday, rest in him. What is death? But a door unto life. Some of y'all catch that on your way home. I'm telling you, I'm preaching and some of y'all missing it. Oh my goodness. What is death but a door unto life? Come on. So whether I go by way of the clods or of the clouds, I'm a winner either way. I can go to my grave with a promise like that. How about you today? I'm standing on the promises of God. That's all I have, y'all, is the promises of God. I mean, it's the promises of God that changed my life. It's the promises of God that made me love like I never loved before. And in my conclusion, I want to tell you this right here. I don't want to hoop today, Brother Whitford. But I want to tell you this right here in my conclusion. Joseph left the world clinging to the great promises of God. He left here right with God. Not only with God, but he left right with man. He left here with full assurance that God had led him every step of the way. He left here knowing that death was not the end, but that there was a better future down the road. When your time to leave here comes, and it will, how will you leave? Are you right with your fellow man? Is it everything like it should be between you and the rest of God's family? If there is a problem, I invite you to fix it today. You can and you should. Don't be coming up with woulda, shoulda, and coulda, because James Cleveland said it might be too late. Do you have the absolute assurance that God's hand has been active in every part of your life? Or are there some events that you can't seem to reconcile just yet? Hello, somebody. Why not bring those areas of doubt and confession to the Lord and let him help you along the way? Why not ask him to give you peace until you reach that lane where everything else will make sense? I'm closing now. So what I'm saying to you, can you face your own death with confidence? Do you have the insurance that you are saved and that you will spend eternity with the Lord in heaven? Oh, wow. Can you rest in the knowledge that he is coming to get you either in the rapture or through the door of death? Maybe you're dealing with death of a loved one and you haven't quite reached the place where you can see God's hand in it. Maybe there is no peace in your heart about it. Come to him and let him help you today. If the Lord has spoken to you on any level today, you need to come before him and do what he wants you to do. He is here ready to help you whenever and wherever the nature of the problem that is stopping you from standing on the promises of God. Romans 10:9. If we confess with the mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in our heart that God raised us from the dead, then you will be saved. But Romans 6:23 says, for the wages of sin is death, and it is the gift of life through Jesus Christ. But Philippians 4:19 says, my God shall supply all, not some, but all of my riches, according to his riches in glory. Sometimes you have to say, enough is enough. I'm tired. Enough is enough. You got to know that you're not a failure. You got to know, no matter what they say about you, it ain't over until God says it's over. Don't let people determine who you are. Know who you are in the Lord. For the God we serve. Let us stand to our feet. I told y'all I wasn't hooping today. My God. The God that we serve. Are you standing on the promises of God today? Are you standing on his promises?
Yes, Lord.
You know, I know that, for many years we've been talking about, oh yeah, I'm saved. I'm sanctified. I'm filled with the Holy Ghost.
All right.
I'm standing on his promises. But when the going gets tough, we get to going. But are you really standing on the promises of God? I'm here to tell you now, I don't want you to be upset about what you heard today when we're talking about the finances of Contra. I went by him, I tapped him on the shoulder, and I said, thank you. Because that's what we're supposed to do.
That's right.
But I'm trusting in God and believing in his ways because he didn't bring us this far to leave us. But it's my job and his job to reiterate sometimes. Don't take it personally. You know yourself. Enough is enough.
Enough is enough.
Are we standing on the promises of God? I don't know about y'all. I know everybody in here belongs to the church. And I believe, I'm pretty sure everybody in here has been giving their life to him already. But sometimes there comes a time when we have to just say, Lord, I'm so tired